Thank you for joining the Hybrid Remote Center of Excellence. I'm Nola Simon.
I'm your host, and what I'd like to actually demonstrate for you today is a tool called Podgagement. So this is of interest to people who podcast, who are maybe considering creating their own podcast, or for people who actually want to understand some of the tools that I've recommended for a while, because this is how I encourage you to follow my podcast and how I recommend that you submit feedback. It's a tool that makes discoverability easier and also makes ratings and review easier. Feedback of any sort is hard to get as a podcaster. And honestly, I've been doing this since 2021. I only have 18 ratings, 16 reviews, 3 platforms, 2 different countries. And honestly, that's solid. I'm happy with that because ratings and reviews don't actually indicate where you land on charts or anything like that too, but they are useful for marketing. And honestly, feedback helps you build out a podcast that is addressing the needs of the listeners. So anything listeners are telling you about what they appreciate, what they're curious about, what they want to pursue, any of that helps you build a better podcast, which promotes better content and more engagement. So that's why I like Podgagement, because all of this makes it easier for people to find the podcast, review the podcast, and submit feedback. And that helps me make a better podcast. So I've used Podgagement for a while. Honestly, when I found it, I was under a different name. It's called my podcast reviews. And it's evolved a lot since then, not just the name change. So this is why I like it. The dashboard is nice that I just showed you, but also you've got these customized pages called the follow page and the love page. So the follow page, you can customize it. You can put in meetings and all that stuff. Mostly I just copy the customized link. And then you get this page, which is cool. You can put it in your show notes. You can put it in your social media. And what this does is it automatically is one page where people can come on and the links to your podcast in any player. So Apple, Spotify are at the top, some of what the podcast is about, and then links to all of the other podcast players that exist. Personally, I use GoodPods an awful lot, but there are others out there. And I like this because it's up to date, because a lot of podcast players have gone away. Like Google got rid of their podcast player. All kinds of different things are happening in the podcast world. So this kind of stuff makes it easier to keep track of what plays. And this is actually like a sensitive page. So I'm on Apple, so it recognizes that I'm using iOS. But if I had an Android, it would only show me players that were playable on Android. So it will pick up on the fact that you're using a specific device. And so the other page is the love page. Again, it's very similar. You can customize it. And then you can post that in. And what this is the feedback page, basically. So it aggregates ratings and reviews. So you can submit feedback on 4 different podcast apps. So Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, GoodPods, Spotify. Spotify only actually allows you to give ratings like in forms of stars. And then you can leave feedback here as well too. Now, I've also included a functionality that I'm testing out because Daniel J. Lewis, who's the creator of Podgagement, has given me an upgrade for the affiliate marketing that I'm doing for him to test out the audio notes. And that's cool too. So I'm going to go back and show you those. And so this is where you can actually have a feedback page that's customized. And you can leave a voicemail. So again, I'm using this to collect things that don't necessarily fit into a rating or review, but it's like, what are you curious about? What questions do you have? Or do you have suggestions for another topic I might want to explore? You can leave a voicemail. And so you can either record the message or you can write it. And then that gets submitted back to me through this inbox. It's directly on Podgagement as well too. So the feedback inbox is here. So I can cut that and download it into like Airtable or Excel or whatever if I wanted to export that. And then I could use that to build out a new podcast. So that's really cool too. I like the image maker. The image maker allows you can use social proof to create an image of your podcast. Right? That's what mine looks like. And change the sizes, right? So what I like about this is I had talked to Daniel at one point when he was redoing Podgagement, and I suggested that we have a video end slot for YouTube, because when I published to YouTube, that's a lot of times what were coming after me too. I didn't necessarily have an end screen. for my videos. So this makes it easy, and I can customize it and make it a different thing. But then I can also do something with the reviews. So if I wanted to download a review that I've gotten, I can create a slide like that too. And then you can change the slides on these. Or like if you wanted something for Pinterest, for example, that's the right size for Pinterest. We can put that up with a link to the podcast episode. You can customize what actually appears in it in terms of the elements, but you also customize the color. And you can see that I've got my hex code in here for the pink that I use. So that's right. Now, some of these other things are coming. There has been, as I said, a lot of change in the podcast world. Recently, Spotify indicated that they're shutting down Chartable. So Chartable actually collects all the chart rankings across the world. And so Daniel's going to be coming out with rankings. It's not there yet, but it's going to be coming soon. And SEO as well, too. Now, this is interesting because you can collaborate with other podcasters as well. And like under networking, this is incoming and outgoing functionality. I don't fully understand this yet, but basically I think it's that you can actually go into your podcast host and recommend other podcasts. So if that shows up like on App Podcasts, for example, that if you identify podcasts that are similar to you, then you can actually control what's actually showing up there. And other podcasters could do the same as well too. So this would be considered outgoing networking. So track what other podcasts are featured by algorithm or curation. And then the incoming is right here as well too. Track where hybrid remote center of excellence is featured on other podcast listings by algorithm or curation. So this is something I have to test out. I don't exactly know how that works, but it does seem cool and interesting. I like that. Just don't know what that's going to be. So these are all things that Daniel is building out. And as I said, like he is creating functionality that's really responsive to the needs of the customer. Like I said, I gave him that feedback about the image that was the right size for YouTube, and he built it. Today, he actually happened to notice that I had problems in my affiliate link and suggested that I fix that. So I like the fact that he pays attention to the people who are actually using his products and recommending them and acting on some of the things that do happen. So that's cool. Now, I don't recommend products that I don't use, I don't believe in. So although I'm exploring affiliate marketing just to learn better so I understand what it is, I have recommended this free for years. So again, the affiliate is not the main part of what I'm doing with this tool. It's about how do you make discoverability and feedback easier. And that helps grow your podcast. So if you're a podcaster already or you're a prospective podcaster, these are the types of tools that you want to be aware of because they can help you build out your podcast and grow it. And you do get a 14-day trial. You can try it. I highly recommend it. I wanted to create this little demo just so it could be helpful so you could actually see how it works. And if we actually go to the things and reviews, I just wanted to show you that last piece so you can actually read how the ratings look and see how they feel. So for example, this was one that was submitted to me back in February, came from GoodPods, from a guy that I know in Australia. And then with this, you can share directly on Twitter. You can share directly on Facebook. I don't really use that many platforms that often. Sometimes you just put the podcast episodes there. So the make an image is really helpful. So you can, if I wanted it to look like Apple Podcasts feedback, then even though it was sitting in GoodPods, I can make it look like came from Apple and can change the functionality of what it looks like. So in terms of readability, it's picking up the pink background. I don't know that this it has as much contrast as could be useful. So it might be better to have something like this so people could read it more easily, right? The quote bubble has more contrast. And again, you can change the size, you can choose the elements, make it look a little different, right? This is why I like it. I highly recommend that you test it out. As I said, like if you follow the affiliate link, you'll get 14-day free trial anyway. And it's worth I quite like it. Enjoy. I hope it's useful and I'd appreciate any feedback. And of course, I'll put the follow and the last page in the show notes so you can actually rate, review, and recommend, share. All of that is helpful for me to build out my podcast and obviously figure out what affiliate marketing is all about as well too. So all helpful. So if you have the time, I'd love to hear what you think about Podgagement and check out my podcast at the same time. All right. Thanks for listening. Talk soon. Bye.